Hi everybody. For this week we're going to be covering the idea of classes and building classes in your application and why you need to do that and what are the pros and cons, as well as looking at things like collections and how do you create a collection, how do you engage with the existing collection types within the .NET framework, and we'll also touch a little bit on, first thing with this video, on doing some form development. What are some of the tools in your toolbox? What are the pieces that Visual Studio provides you out of the box that allow you to create uh, pretty nice looking forms and engaging forms? So that's going to be the focus or the start of this lecture. So before you we have a form. This is basically a standard Windows application. I'm calling it CP Week 5. And the first thing I'm going to do is take this form and I want to kind of jazz it up. I don't want it to be just a simple form with, not a whole lot of style. I want to bring in some menus and some toolbars and things like that. So the first thing I'm going to do is from my toolbox, I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to click on menu strip and I'm going to drag it into my form. What you'll see that does is it brings up kind of an empty menu toolbar or menu bar at the very top of the form, and it says type here. You'll also notice there's a drop down arrow. If we drop down, we have different types of menu items that we can add. So not only just a standard menu item like you would see in Visual Studio that says file, there's also custom menu types such as combo boxes and text boxes. The latter two are not common, but they do have purpose and function. So if you're feeling adventurous and want to kind of evaluate those and what they can do for you, by all means feel free to. So I'm going to go ahead and take this first item. I'm just going to click into it and I'm going to do ampersand file. Now the ampersand leading the letter F signifies that there is a hotkey or a shortcut key for the letter F on this file menu. What I can do then is for things such as navigating by hitting the Alt key and F, that allows me to navigate the menus by using just those key strokes that are underlined. So Alt Fn, for example, would bring up the new menu, and then I could hit P for project and I could create a new project. Those are hotkeys on the menu within Visual Studio. If we want to emulate that, we can do the same work by typing in ampersand file, capital F, and getting that type of experience. If you look, we want to kind of stick with convention. So if you look under file, you'll see exit. The X is underlined. That is just convention, and I recommend, when possible, stick with what are standard Windows conventions. And the reason for that is you want to provide consistency to your users. So if there's a convention that you see throughout things like Visual Studio, Microsoft Office, even simple applications like Notepad and Paint, you want to engage with those because your user is going to expect those types of conventions to be followed. Sometimes it's fun to bunk convention, but sometimes it's good to keep with it because then it makes your user feel more comfortable about using your program. Alright, so I'm going to have a file and just an exit, and then I'm going to have help, and then under help I'll just do an about. So just to kind of give my application a little more look and feel. The next thing I want to add is I want to add a toolbar or tool strip. Now we can drag and drop the tool strip right here onto the form, and this works. It works great. We can come in here, we can add a button, add a label, add some split buttons, which is what this control is that we're experiencing right now. We can add a drop down, separator, again the combo box, a text box, and a progress bar. So we have a lot of options here for the tool strip. The one thing that I always find that's difficult when putting a tool strip on your app is that if you try to bring anything else in, so let's say it's a text box, and let's make it a multi-line, and then I'm going to go ahead and jump to my properties, and I'm going to dock this to all four corners of my app. What happens is that controls start to bump up and actually, in some cases, go underneath the toolbar. And It's very inconsistent about when it happens and why it happens, but it does occur. So my recommendation, instead of just dropping a toolbar onto your application directly, if you grab the toolstrip container and drop it on first, and then dock it to fill, what it does is it provides you with drop points. And these drop points allow your user to move toolbars around within the application if you make these panels visible. And if you don't make them visible, it at least gives you the ability to kind of hide or show toolbars, as well as have a space for growth, and then all your other controls kind of wrap around it, that you don't end up getting dealing with having to set margins on controls and making sure that they're in focus and that they're in a visible space on the screen. So this container helps you kind of wrangle those tool strips. So if we drag a tool strip into this area now, the tool strips gets docked into the container, and then we can just add a couple of buttons here. So we'll just add 2 buttons and maybe a separator and 2 more buttons. Now each one of these buttons is a control, so we can go to the properties dialog box and we'll actually see that these have names. So sometimes we can we want to give these specific names so we know what we're engaging with. So maybe this is I'm just going to use TSB for short for tool strip button, and this will be TSB new. This one we can make it say TSB exit. And the properties on a lot of these buttons are very flexible. So for example, this is an image button, but we can do image and text, which gives us the ability to add a text description next to our button. So we could say new. This is our exit button, so we'll give it a text description of exit, and then we'll change it to be image and text. And if you want to set the image, you can actually click on the image property. There's a little ellipse button which allows you to navigate or find an image. So we can do an import, and then we can navigate to where we have some images stored. So I'm going to select this door close icon for my exit and hit OK. And then I'll do the same thing for my new. And I'm actually going to kind of try to find one that is a file. And we'll set that. So now we have a couple of icons with our app. So we now have a menu bar and a toolbar. The last thing that I want to incorporate is what's called a data grid view. Now we can bring in pretty much any control we want at this point as well and drop it in here. So if we wanted to put a text box in here, we could do that. If we wanted to bring a button in here, just like you would on a normal form, we're just dropping it into this container region. So it allows us to drop content in, and it keeps it kind of contained. It's separated from those toolbars. But the app that I'm wanting to actually build is the poor man's version of Quicken. Okay, so it's basically going to be a really simple banking, bookkeeping type application. So what I want to bring in is under data, I want to bring in a data grid view, and I'm going to go ahead and dock this. And I'm going to turn off a majority of these adding, editing options. And the reason for that is I just want to have this grid where I can list all of the transactions that are coming from my accounts. So that's going to be kind of the starting point for this application, and we'll kind of give this the not so Quicken. That'll be the name of our app, not so Quicken. So that's going to be the beginning of our application. We're going to continue to evolve this throughout this lecture set and look at how we can start to incorporate classes into this, how we can add additional forms so that we can push and pull data between them. But this is kind of the starting point for this week's lecture.